you from afar with a child's heart and a man's longing. I know you better than you know yourself. Better than any man, myth, or immortal. I've watched you seduce for centuries in the search for a creature who could please. Fire your desires. He could have never made you happy. You would have died in his world. Too cruel. Too cold. I've waited for this moment to swim off into the current with you. Don't be afraid. Your search is over. That's all you need to know. Swim with me. Off into the current.
Yeah, we're here just now.
Yeah, vocal mic's on.
What is it? On Neuro-Semantics. Here you are. You must be in the right place at the right time. Front row. I think you might be in the front row. We're just trying to work out exactly where we're going to be.
Would you want me to get that chair so you can sit in the chair from time to time?
It's noontime and time for Neuro-Semantics. We have with us today Michael Hall and Michelle Duval, creators of the discipline of Neuro-Semantics, which they say is like taking the red pill. I'm sure you all know what that is. It's designed to wake you up to the matrix of the frames of your mind so that you can discover how to manage your mind, take charge of your life, and make your dreams for greater come true, for greater effectiveness, success, health, and happiness. Are you ready? Because they are here. Michelle and Michael are right down here in front. And those of you who are doing this workshop, would you please let us know where you would like us to be? Would you want us to move back under the shade cloth? And also, Michelle would like to borrow a sun hat from somebody. Would that be possible? Great, there's a sun hat, Michelle.
Yay!
Why don't you just move up there under the shade cloth? Michael and Michelle? Yeah, well, you can get more people if you move back under the shade cloth there.
What's your name? Neuro-Semantic Workshop? Or you are now? Right.
Well, as you can tell, Michelle has just flown in from Australia to be here just for this. I'm from Grand Junction, and we do workshops, peak performance training workshops in Grand Junction, and she's down here from Sydney, Australia to be a part of that, and that's why she's here this weekend.
So did you detect that from my voice yet? No? Yes? Of course, Dreamtime is a very big part of Aboriginal culture in Australia. So do many of you know about Aboriginal culture and the essence of where Dreamtime has come from? It really is a core part of our native people, and our native people in Australia are the Aboriginal culture, and they have an incredible source of myth, an incredible source of spirituality that really permeates their culture. And one of their celebrations and one of their stories is all about Dreamtime, which I was just hearing from the creators of this whole event. It was inspired by their time from when they were actually in Australia. So it's really special that I can be here to celebrate and be a part of this with you. Where are you all from? Colorado? Florida. London.
London.
Just came from Sydney. Good on you, mate. We heard a lot of people were from LA, California, New York. Any of you here? No?
Even Texas. Texas.
Texas. Where? Oregon? Cool.
Has anybody ever heard of the phrase neurosemantics? Is that familiar with anybody? Neuro obviously is about neurology and our nervous systems and our brain stem on top of our nervous systems that bring in data. Semantics is about meaning. So it's the meanings that we perform. And in neurosemantics, we say that everything you do and experience and feel is a performance of some meaning. So somebody who's phobic, who can get so rattled and phobic with an elevator, with a snake, is performing a fear meaning. A stutterer is performing by voice the meaning that disfluency is dangerous. So what if everything you do, everything you feel, every skill, every competency, every health experience, what if everything that comes out of your neurology is a meaning? Then the next question is, does that meaning serve you, enhance you, free you? Does it enable you, empower you, or does that meaning make life miserable? So in neurosemantics, we say that we're all meaning makers. There is no meaning out there. I don't know about you, but I've never walked out my front door and stumbled over a hunk of meaning and said, who left that meaning there? Because it doesn't exist out there. It takes a mind-body system to create meaning, and we create meaning.
So my guess is that many of you have come here with some really high level of meaning, creativity, self-expression, connection, community, world issues, the things that are really close to your heart. And the question is, most of us really want to live an authentic life where we can express those high meanings in our day-to-day practices, the principles that you wish to live by. But how often do you experience many things interfering with those high meanings and the philosophies and the ethos that you genuinely wish to live by? So what we want to play with, discuss, explore with you today is really about how to more embody in your body those high meanings so that they actually are habituated. They actually are encoded in the way you go through the world. They're in your communication. They're in the way that you take care of your body, your physiology, your biology. They're in the way that you connect with whatever is the level of connection that you desire. And that it's not something that there is the separation between.
So this brings up the subject. What meanings do you have in your mind that's not yet in your bodies? Hopefully you know more than you're performing, because the opposite. But all of us have things that I know better than what I'm doing. So if we could take our performance to the level of our meanings. So in neurosemantics, we are always talking about closing the knowing-doing gap. I know better than that. Why did I do that? I know better than I'm doing. So we want to close that knowing-doing gap. And how we do that is what Michelle just mentioned. We get it into our bodies. A number of years ago, a business partner of mine wrote me, and he said, how do you write justify the margin in WordPerfect? I don't know. Alternate control F4. My fingers knew. Do. What else do you know that you're not telling me? How did that knowledge, that conceptual knowledge, get in my neurology, in my muscle memory, so my muscles know it, even though consciously I don't know it anymore? Well, it's embodied. And that's part of neurosemantics. We embody meaning so that it's just our way of being in the world. It's just a way of operating that now is natural, intuitive, automatic, and it's embodied.
So equally as we're able to embody the meanings that we want to live by, many of us have meanings encoded in our bodies that we don't want to have, that really don't inform our bodies to do and to operate and to live in the world the way we want to. A really personal example of mine is that 3 years ago, I was diagnosed with a terminal autoimmune disease in my brain called cerebral vasculitis. Has anyone ever heard of that? It's the opposite to cancer. It's a disease where the immune system has become corrupted and it can't distinguish self from viruses, and it actually attacks like a Pac-Man whichever part of the body that it's in. There are more than 80 different autoimmune diseases, and one of them is cerebral vasculitis. And it was in my brain, literally just eating up the back and the front of my brain. And I discovered through my journey with that, after a prognosis of having 6 months before I'd be deaf, blind and mute, and a 2-year prognosis before the disease would be fatal, I really got to look inside to discover what are the erroneous meanings that my nervous system and my immune system has actually taken on board that's causing my body to have an innate response which really doesn't serve my life being and my well-being. So equally we have the ability to be able to uncode the meanings that have got inside the body that just operate.
So in neurosemantics, one of the first things we do is diagnosis in terms of what meanings are you performing. Do those meanings really serve you, enhance you, free you, give you more creativity, more productivity, more enjoyment, more meaningfulness? And if not, then the question is, how do we release those meanings? So Michelle's been talking about some meanings that was sending messages to her nervous system that would actually be an autoimmune system disease. How do we let that go? If we create meaning, how can we suspend meaning and letting it go?
So each one of you probably has some area of your life, some area of your practice that you feel you either want to be able to live more fully those meanings, or you've got meanings encoded that really are not working out for you. So I'm going to ask you to turn to someone next to you and to be able to have a conversation and explore for a couple of minutes what are some meanings that you either want to more fully embody in your life and in your body, or what are some meanings that you'd like to be able to transcend and move beyond.
So if our purpose is to have a life that's more meaningful, what would be 3 meanings that would fill your life so your life would be more full of the kind of meanings that you want to express, that would be a part of your way of being in the world? Just how you move through the world, it's just part of who you are.
So find someone next to you or behind you or across this big group and have a dialogue. Because as I'm sure you all know, that through communication we commune.
That's right. That's so funny.
Yeah. Right after this, I was caught off guard. I just sat down here.
So what would be the most meaningful thing
She walked right into it.
that's happening? Oh, I see. Before you leave.
I was thinking
I know, I was really worried. It's kind of a hard question. Like for me, what does that mean? Yeah. I don't know.
Identify. Does everybody have 3? Let's hear some of what you're coming up with, because sometimes that gives brainstorming. It helps us to prime the pump for other people. What meanings would you like to have to embody and to manifest more fully in your life? I need more time.
Sorry? So say some more. How specifically for you?
Okay, so following through, more focus and intentionality, fulfilling dreams, so making things happen. Those would be some meanings that we might want to grant to ourselves. You may want to have some meanings about healthfulness and living healthfully. So that might be a meaning to put in.
Any other examples? Okay. So better relationships. And what are some of the meanings about better relationships that you're looking for? What would be the meanings you want? So better communication. So being able to express my needs.
So if you notice what everybody's talking about so far are values, what would be important to you? So fulfillment, carried through, better relationships, better health. a meaning will take a value and turn it into a statement, almost a belief statement about what is important. So I believe that I can make a difference in the world would be a meaningful statement. Because if you believe the opposite, what difference can I make? What can I do? That would be a meaning that if it's in your body, you would probably be manifesting it in certain ways. There'd be certain physiology that would go along with that. But what if you had the belief and it was really meaningful? I have a gift, a special, unique gift that can make a difference. What if you had the belief or the meaning, I'll figure a way out. Somehow I'll figure it out. That would be maybe a creativity belief or an understanding belief.
And what if you got that so encoded in your body that you absolutely, uncategorically believed it and could orientate your life around it? What difference would that difference make if you could do that? What are some other examples? Okay, so you could create what happened. What other examples do you have of meanings that you want to get into your body and expressed in your life? Okay, so there's a higher power that's working within us. Great. What are some other higher meanings that if you could express in your life would totally transform yourself, your community, your relationships, ultimately the planet?
One that Michelle has and that helped her to deal with her autoimmune system disease is I believe, and the meaning of my life is my body knows how to heal itself. And I can tap into my body's natural regenerative self-healing. And so while she met a neurologist 3 years ago who said that she would be deaf and blind within 6 months and dead in 2 years, that was 3 years ago.
So what are some of the higher meanings that you want to live by? Let's hear some more, because we can all learn from each other.
So what is the meaning that holds for you that's significant?
So that's what I'm hearing, if I can play with that, is the meaning that you'd like to have totally inside your body is that I can be received and that my expression can be received in the world.
And maybe, to add a little bit more to that, what if the meaning was, I'll figure out a way to translate this to the cultures I'm in so that it is commercially viable?
So one of the next things we're going to do is looking at what interferes with that. So one of the next things is to look at what are the meanings that actually interfere and get in the way from being able to express it in the way that you want to, and sustaining that.
So in neurosemantics, one of the things we talk about frame games. Another metaphor we use is that everything that comes out of you, out of your mouth, out of your emotions, what if we thought about it as a game? If it's a game, what are the rules? Who do you play it with? When do you play? What are you trying to win? What do you get when you win? So A lot of us have grown up with people who know how to blame. They're very skilled blamers. In fact, they even have the neurology of blaming. They might have the voice of blaming. So, and they like to play the blame game. So we do something and they blame. Maybe we got some people who have played the blame game ourselves. But it's just a game, and it comes from a frame. It comes from some meaning that somebody is to be held accountable. Somebody is to be blamed. And I need to find my person, and then I'll feel free and released. So that's the blame game. Opposite of that might be the solution game. So if something goes wrong, instead of looking, okay, who's the culprit, we look at how can we solve it? How can we work together to find a good resolution? That's a whole different frame of mind. And when you have that frame of mind, out of your mouth, out of your emotions, out of your body, comes a whole different game. So we talk about frame games. Now, about a frame game, the problem that any of us ever experience is never, the problem is never us. The problem is the frames. So as we do this next piece, always remember that whatever you find, interfering, sabotaging, poisoning your body, whatever toxic idea, thought, belief, it's just a frame, and it's a human construct of some sort. And so what we're going to do is, as we take the red pill, to realize we created the meanings, or we just have...
So, I think for me it's procrastination.
Triggering painful that they just said was the idea of the game. As you brought that up, the first thing came about its frame, and then I realized they were going to be
There's something that's like holding me back from it. Maybe it's just the doubt of not knowing whether or not it's the right plan. Is it going to truly mean happiness in the end?
I'm going to share a couple that I discovered in my specific journey into my biology. And for me, life is an incredible journey, and there's always going to be a process of discovery and stepping back and discovering what's running my life. But obviously in the context of my biology, I had to make a very intensive journey due to the time constraints that I was given. Diagnosed in 2003 and was prescribed to have chemotherapy, and that in that time frame they didn't think that would necessarily result in any type of healing. So I decided to forego the chemotherapy and to really work with my core belief in life that I have the opportunity to embrace the biology and to learn from it. So in my exploration, some of the frames of mind that I discovered were really interfering with me was being a really purposeful woman and really knowing that my purpose on the planet is to contribute. I have been incredibly what we call other referent, very focused on others, and incredibly focused on being of service. That's been my number one intention in life, is to be of service. That had got so encoded into my biology that it meant that my immune system actually couldn't distinguish myself. So each cell in a normal functioning body has a marker on it that actually identifies it as a self cell. And a normal, healthy, functioning biology system, the immune system goes along and does its job every single day, and it is able to see the cell that says self and avoids it. But due to the encoding that I got, it's so hardwired, I couldn't distinguish myself from other. That was showing up in my relationships and how I was in my relationships. I didn't have a sense of self-definition, even though I was on the planet conserving and contributing to others. So that was one of the most critical frames that I needed to discover. Another one that I discovered that triggered off the disease was a frame that I had about love. For me, love was an incredibly empowering frame of mind, or so I believed. It wasn't until I started to step back and to realise the higher meanings behind love that I had. Because as we're about to share with you, every meaning has another meaning behind it that informs how we express and live the meaning. And for me, I had encoded love to be incredibly dangerous. And so as I got into intimate union and got married and really got into intimate core relationships, as I experienced love, because love had become so dangerous, my body went into incredible fear, incredible trauma. And so as we can see, that fear caused the body to really change its natural functioning. There's two examples of frames that we didn't know were at the forefront. When we actually started to step back, we could discover that's what was informing my body to do what it was doing.
In neurosemantics, we talk about how that we think, we make representations. And as you've been talking, you've probably been making a movie in your mind representing something you want or something that gets in the way. And as you think about it, there's a movie, pictures, sounds, sensations, smells, tastes, because that's how we think. But we're a class of life that don't only just think, we think about our thinking. It's called self-reflexive consciousness. So if I think about somebody criticizing me, and in my mind I got a picture of someone's face, and it's tense, and I hear their voice, and the volume that's playing in the movie of my mind is a real intense, you worthless son of a bitch. And I turn up the volume, and the face gets bigger, and then I have these feelings. Well, in NLP, neurosemantics, we can turn all that down. So hear the same words, but now in the sexiest tone of voice you could imagine. You worthless son of a bitch. You'll never amount to anything, you shit. And try to feel bad. Because when you change the quality of your representations, the feelings change. Or you could take that picture, instead of it being in your face, just take it out to where it's the size of my finger. And as you think about it, it probably doesn't feel overwhelming. So how we represent is really important. But above and beyond that is what I think about my pictures and whatever I'm representing. So if I have a belief like criticism hurts you, you've got to feel bad when someone doesn't like or approve of you. I have that frame, and then there's this criticism, and even though I try to make my movie so that it doesn't bother me so much, if I still have that frame, then that belief is going to send messages to my body or commands to my nervous system. When Michelle had her beliefs that she just shared about love being dangerous, it sent messages to her body, and her body was obeying those messages. So she had brain damage, she lost eye-hand coordination, the neurologist took away her driver's license for a year because she was having seizures, because the messages sent to the body was trying to actualize, trying to manifest the messages. That's why the messages, the frames, are critical. And that's the problem, not us. As we do better thinking, we'll send better messages. So the skill is the step back skill. And we're going to invite you to experience that in just a moment. That whatever I'm thinking about, let me say that I think about something that's sabotaging me. Maybe it's my beliefs about money, my beliefs about budgets, my beliefs about society, my beliefs about approval, whatever your belief is. Think about that. Think about what it's doing to you. And in just a moment, we're going to literally physically step back to think about the me that was there experiencing that. How do I think and feel about that me in that state?
So we're going to invite you to stand up if you like. And to get your bodies involved. Because you like to do that, don't you? Get your body involved.
Step back down.
So each one, the value, whatever it is. And notice how your body feels in that state. Notice the tension in your body.
What are you representing? What are you seeing on the movie of your mind? How are you representing it?
Notice whether there's movement in your body or not. Notice it.
So just notice.
And we're going to invite you now to actually step out of that and to step back or in front or beside, preferably back.
So step back from there so that you then can notice the you who was in that state a moment ago. Notice what that you was thinking, feeling, experiencing, because now you can have thoughts and feelings about that you. What do you think?
So the key is you've actually stepped out of it. So if you haven't yet stepped out of it and you took it with you, step back.
If you need to step back yet again so that you can notice the you who had those thoughts and feelings about the first one, step back yet again.
The question you're asking yourself is, what do I think and feel about myself when I'm thinking that? What do I believe about that state? What do I believe about those beliefs? What do I realise about myself when I look at myself there? What do I think and feel or see and hear about myself?
The key to this is to keep stepping back until you get to a state. In the step back process, sometimes we step back into another negative state where we judge ourselves. We're critical of ourselves. So we step back from that and notice the critic me. And then we step back, but eventually we can step back into the awareness that I have choice. I can run my own brain, movies in my mind. The emotions are just emotions. I'm more than my emotions. I'm more than my thoughts. I'm more than these memories, these imaginations, these fears. These are just expressions of me, and probably not the best expression. And so you step back until you have that sense of empowerment. I can choose my states instead of the states having me to where I react without my fullest expression.
So is everybody in a witnessing state now? In a state of awareness? Anybody not? So let me invite you to step back even further. And when you step back, you may even want to go higher. But as you do, you can look down apart from. And for each one of us, there may be different times in your life where you have to even get further and further back from it. Does that distance give any new perspective? Okay.
There was a dance therapist in Chicago, Gina Demos, who took this model, the United States model that you're now experiencing, and she took it in her dance therapy. Somebody would come in and say, I'm depressed, and she would say, dance depressed. So they would go. She would then have them come back, and she would say, watch this, and she would do the dancing depression. And she would say, what do you think about that? And they say, that is so sick. Dance sick. So they would dance sick. She would step back and say, what do you think about that? And they would say, well, that's shameful, so that dance. So it would keep going back until finally it would burst. That is funny. That is ridiculous. That is silly. I'm more than that. Dance that. Dance, I'm more than that. Dance, that's funny. So there's always a point where we jump to a place that's more resourceful, where we have a sense of, these are just expressions of me. I'm more than all of that.
Sometimes as we step back, it will become more intense. Did anyone experience that? That as they stepped back and identified those meanings behind it, that it became more intense? Sometimes it will, just like Michael was saying, it'll create so much emotional tension that emotional tension creates a whole new space that we actually transcend into. And it's through being willing to actually step back and experience that tension that we actually can create enough creativity inside of ourselves that we can create a whole new frames of mind, the whole new state of being, the whole new way of being.
So as you do this exercise, whether now or at some other point, and you step back to the witnessing state, from the witnessing stage, you're in the most creative space where you can do something just really fantastic now. Answer this question. What would be the most powerful frame of mind, the most empowering frame of mind, the most empowering state, the most empowering thought, belief, intention, decision? What could I think? What could any human being on this planet think that would put themselves into really a powerful place? And if you're just witnessing and you're answering that question, what would be the most powerful thing? It could be, I could have fun living my life. It could be, I could live life more healthfully. I could be more commercially viable, whatever it is. Step back into that and look at yourself and that unresourceful state through those eyes. What would be the most empowering state and frame of mind that if you stepped into that and looked at your unresourceful state with eyes of joy, love, determination, resilience, passion, compassion?
It may have to be a state of acceptance. That state of being able to accept just what is.
And notice how that state of your most empowering frame of mind transforms the unresourceful you. How does it transform that unresourceful you?
You've got a big smile there.
Now, if you've accessed the states and they've been strong, step with your most empowering frame of mind and state, and just let it fill your body. If you were fully, completely there, more fully than you could ever imagine, and you took all of this and stepped back into unresourcefulness with this.
So before you do that, being in the state, the new state, the empowering state of mind, the new belief frame, the new understanding, the new awareness, allow yourself to let your body fully experience that. What's the breathing of that state of mind? Now, it may not be completely true yet. This is the piece that gets it in your body. How would you breathe? If you truly, truly believe this, and every cell in your body believed it, how would you breathe? How would you hold your posture? Would there be movement or no movement? What colours would be present? What sounds would you be hearing? What voice would you be expressing and speaking with? What would be the muscle tension in your face and in your shoulders? How would your hands be? How would your posture be?
Check it out.
And if you need to move, guys, move. Add the energy into it. How would you be speaking to yourself? What would be the tone of voice in your head? What other influences would you bring with it? And when you can fully feel this,
when you can fully feel it, then step into the unresourceful place with all of these resources that you've created.
so looking through those eyes, when you're ready, step in.
So you're a meaning maker. You've been making some meaning. Hopefully you've been creating some really great pieces of ideas, thoughts, beliefs, intentions. And of course we're doing this really, really quick, but you could spend time just really creating the meanings that would fill your life and that would be manifested, that you want to manifest. And as you do that, and then bring that to those moments of challenge, those moments when we sabotage ourselves, when we let something get in the way. So as an illustration, if I've got a frame about criticism, being criticized or not having approval, and then I go to the place where I don't need people's approval. I have the right to be me. I have the right to express myself, and by God, I'm going to express myself. And I take that into my neurology, and then I step into that place where it had been challenging.
Here is yours, but I had ME, post-viral fatigue, ME for quite a number of years. Started about 13 years ago. I just want to know how you got through your journey.
So the question was, what was your name?
Ronnie.
Ronnie? Ronnie shared that she had a virus, ME, was it? Post-virus for 13 years. And the question is that how did I get through mine? So what specifically is the resource, or what specifically are you seeking to learn from that question? What I'm trying to work out, I could answer it. I could spend 3 days going through that.
Yeah, it's I suppose at the end of the day it's positive thinking, mind over matter, and I don't know, but
for us in our work, we don't see it as positive thinking, mind over matter. We see it as dealing with genuine reality and embracing what is. So when I think about my health, it certainly hasn't been a process of just thinking positive thoughts. One of the things, because if we just thought positive thoughts, I'd have really big breasts and really long legs. So not just positive thinking. So from that standpoint, it's from a neurosemantic standpoint, it really is working with the system. And so we think of the system as a mind, body, emotion system. And for me personally, I think of the system as a spiritual and energetic system as well. So when we work with the mind, body, emotion system, we want to work systemically. So the neurosemantic model is a systemic model which allows us to look at many different interfaces, and we want to work at all of those different levels. So what we're presenting here today is an interface looking at it mentally and emotionally. So it's very much systemic. Do you want to say something like that?
One of the things we do with meta states, if normally we have a state, say I'm insecure, I'm nervous, then a meta state is, what state do you have about that? What do you think about that? And if you judge yourself, I'm inadequate. So you step back, and now you're in the state of inadequacy about that. What you've essentially done, what we do with any time we judge ourselves, is we attack ourselves. We're in self-attack. Because I brought judgment to my experience, and it's just an experience, as if that's all I am. So here's something counterintuitive, something so paradoxical. If I embrace my insecurity, if I breathe in my insecurity and just notice it, and then even ask the question, should I welcome this more? Should I give way to this? Or should I just let it out? So it's really an interesting process of how, by embracing what we fight, it starts to change it. So with a stutterer, I work with a lot of stutterers, and a stutterer is essentially a person who has a phobia of misspeaking. They're scared of getting stuck. Because they step back, I'm inadequate. And they step back, people will judge me. And they step back, I'll not succeed in life. And they just keep making it worse and worse. So the first thing I do with a stutter is show me what you can do. I can say Jesus in 17 syllables. Jesus. Can you do better than that? They have spent their whole life trying not to stutter, and that over control makes it worse. So I'm inviting them, let's play. Let's step back to play and bring playfulness to it. It's just lips and words. It doesn't mean all the stuff that you've given it meaning. And when I can get them to play with it, then I give them a homework assignment. I want you to stutter 5 minutes every morning. Before you go to work, you got to play with, so you have it rather than it has you. So a lot of the releasing things is like that. Because what makes us sick? Resentments, playing the old movies that we didn't like in the first place over and over and over until we get so sick with bitterness or hatefulness or dread or doubt. And so we just keep bringing all that stuff to us, whereas if we just breathe it in and let it go, it has that paradoxical effect.
I had a really interesting experience where in teasing out the frames of mind, I got asked by a friend of mine, Sarah McIntyre, she's a coach as well, and we work together, and she asked me one question. And just by asking me one question, it caused my whole entire nervous system to be activated. Within literally, I'm not exaggerating, 3 seconds, my face went from normal colour to blistered, pusseous things coming out of them. I had a liquid coming out from under my arm. I had my heart beating so quickly that I was actually shaking from how quickly it started to beat. And I started to become faint and thinking that I was going to pass out. And that was the power of someone asking me one question that brought a meaning into consciousness. And that's how the neurology and the biology got fired off. And so for a week or so, I was actually trying to work out how to get out of that loop, because I fired off the meaning and I hadn't found an exit to how to actually stop that running around in my neurology. And the key thing to it was exactly as Mike was saying, is I had to embrace that feeling. And my fear was that if I embraced fully what had been set off, I'd been given from the doctor's standpoint this diagnosis, my neurology was so heightened and no one I went to was able to help me, that it didn't seem like the logical thing to do to actually fully go into that physiological state anymore. And that was exactly what I did. I fully embraced that feeling in my body and did a process that we do in our work together, which actually allowed me to...
I probably could have been on the other side of the mountain, but I noticed that as I came back and you were asking to now step back into that original place that I was, I couldn't do it. Like I was like, but what you're trying to basically say is go ahead and do it. Just go back there.
Okay.
Is that
so
correct?
as you stepped back, and then when you came back, you couldn't step back into it.
Yeah, basically, you know, I took the one step away from what the meaning behind what I was struggling with, right? And then I did exactly what you said. I went into that, oh, well, that was pathetic, criticism thing. And then I walked away from that. And then I got into the giggly thing where I was like, okay, this is kind of silly. But I ended up getting to a point where I was like, okay, well, I'll walk back there. And I was that one step away from going back to the meaning part. And I didn't do it. I didn't step into it. Because I was like, you know, I'm kind of liking the way I'm feeling right now. But what you're saying is in order to truly cure that, you have to step back into the original. Gotcha.
What's your name?
Penny.
Penny. So Penny says that she did not make the last step back into the unresourceful state. And the question is, are you saying go ahead and do that? And we're saying yes, keep it. Because as you bring those resources, you bring the giggly back into that, it changes it. So it's different.
So the system reorganizes around the qualities that you're now bringing back into it.
That makes sense.
But the distinction, the key part of it is the acceptance is the first step. The acceptance is the counterintuitive piece that Michael was speaking about, which is to fully embrace it, to actually welcome it in. And you'll see I'm using my hands because that's metaphorically what we're talking about. Genuine acceptance, and here's a really important distinction, is very often in our spiritual practices we think it's a lifetime to get to the state of acceptance. And in our work, acceptance is a state that you actually experience in different forms every day. You have acceptance about going out in the rain when it rains, don't you? You've got acceptance right now that it's hot, I'm guessing most of you. Even though it may be really uncomfortable, it's just the way it is. So we can take some of those everyday states and actually bring them to very complex things. For example, like a phobia. For example, like the fear that I had in that biological state, and I have had many of those that I've had to go through. And it's through bringing that state of genuine acceptance that we can actually welcome it in and start the process of bringing the other resources in. So that may be the first step, Penny, that you might want to access.
In Neuro-Semantics, we use the metaphor of the Matrix movie, as one of our metaphors, and we say that we were all born in a matrix of meaning that I didn't create, but I was born into it, of human constructs of what things mean, what things are, and how things work, and oftentimes it takes us to 20 to 30 to 50 years old before we wake up and realize that matrix of all those frames of meaning, it has us. And when we wake up to it, that's like taking the red pill and the realization that I accepted that matrix, or I created it. And so as in the movie, when Neo is taken out of the matrix, he takes the red pill and he escapes the matrix, the most counterintuitive thing is Morpheus takes him back into the matrix so that he can master it, so that he can change it at will, at thought. And in some ways, our minds are like that, and our lives are like that. Once we recognize it's just frames, and we know how frames are made, and we know how to remake them, or to suspend them, as we get trained to enter into the matrix, we can change it at our choice and will. Because if nothing means anything inherently, but I give things meaning, and when I do, it becomes real to me inside, then our ability to create meaning and to step back from meaning, that's where the witness state is so powerful. I can step back and just notice it, and then have a choice. Do I want this? Do I want to take counsel of this? And that gives us choice.
And so as you can hear, inherent in there is the presupposition that you want to enter the matrix. That you actually want to take that pill and go on that journey and discover how far it goes. And in the background, there'll be a mindset of resourcefulness that wherever it goes, I'll have the resources to be able to find my way out, because built into the system is that wisdom, is that knowledge.
Other comments, questions?
Yeah, when we're confronted with conditioned behavioral patterns that act as barriers towards spiritual growth, what is the most effective way to confront those conditioned behaviors, and how can we get past the barriers?
Have you got an example? What was your name?
Yes, I.
Yes, I. What's your example? What's a pattern behavior that gets in the way of your own spiritual enlightenment?
Well, pretty much right now for me, it's the way that I learn. I graduated from college, and it's always been, you know, being lectured, taking notes, and taking the test. And now I graduated, and life is the test. There are no professors, and
Just you.
Just me creating my own reality, and it's, you know, just the way I've been taught and conditioned to learn is not sufficient now for growth. And it's just, you know, about finding a new way. But what I've learned in my past is not really shown me that.
So what specifically in what you've learned doesn't work in this domain of life?
Looking to others for the answer.
Okay.
Okay. So here's a frame. I need to look to others for answer, or others must know something yet that I need. Or we do a lot of workshops. In fact, next week we start a whole series of workshops in Grand Junction. And there will be some people at the workshops who, they have a belief. One more workshop and I'll finally get it. One more book.
Anyone else got that here?
One more book, and then I can really start living. And even though I write books and sell books and do workshops, I don't want that. I would prefer them not have some choice around that, so that they're there not thinking it's going to start one of these days, or that I'm the expert on them. I'm not the expert on them. They're the expert on them. Because true empowerment doesn't come until you realize, I make meanings of my life. And so once I set that in, and then program it in, we do a belief change pattern that goes like this. A belief is different from a thought, because a belief is a step back state, a meta state of confirmation of the thought. That's why you can think a lot of things, read a lot of things, and not believe it. Everybody has that ability? You're not afraid of reading something or hearing somebody say something that's different from your thoughts, because you can think it without believing it. So thoughts are different from beliefs. What is a belief? Well, our short version of it is that a belief is a confirmed thought about a thought. So how do you confirm a thought? Well, there's lots of proofs. So maybe it's the authority who says so. Well, if he says so, if she says so, it has to be true. Or if it's written in a book, if it's in black and white, it has to be true. Or if I hear it 15 times, repetition makes it true. So we have different ways of proof. But whatever it is, we come to the point where at some level we say, that's right. That's the way it is. Yes. So here's a really interesting thing that we found. The state of yes. Now salespeople have known this forever. Get a person saying yes, 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 and then put your product in front of them. It's the yes set. It works because we're confirming, we're validating. And when you confirm and validate, what are you doing but bringing it in? So if I've got this power to validate, to say yes, or maybe a Meg Ryan's yes, 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 and to have a crescendo of yeses, our ability to say yes is what validates, which is why you can believe things that aren't true. Everybody can believe things that are not true? everybody has believed things that's not true. That beliefs don't have to be true to be believed, they just have to be validated. Well, if that's so, then we could take any great thought and bring some yeses to it, some confirmation feelings to it, and we could set it in our mind as a belief that's going to send commands to our nervous system to actualize. So one of the ways we can do that is to take a great belief like I am the ultimate authority of my life. I have to live by my values and my visions. I have to be true to me to have integrity and congruency. And then just, do you believe that? Do you want to believe that? Will you believe that? What would you be breathing like if you believe that? What would be the walk of that? What would be the muscle tension of it? And as we get ourselves or someone else to say yes to that belief, it starts installing it.
And in terms of getting that fully into the body, as Michael was saying, the breathing, the posture, etc., also noticing where have you placed that authorship, being the author of your own life, being the authoritative of your own life. Is it outside of yourself? And if you can feel that it's actually outside of yourself, you can actually bring that back into your body, actually inviting it back in and allowing it to settle inside your body. Notice where you store the power to make your own decisions, to have your own values, to have your own voice, your own beliefs, and actually bring it back into your body. So as you can hear, we're constantly looking at the system and looking at all aspects of the system and how we bring all of it together. And once it comes together, it creates something much more than the individual parts.
So that was a great question about how do we actually start installing some ideas. The opposite side of that is how do we disvalidate something? How do we say, hell no? Well, two of the earliest states that all of us experienced as little children was yes and no. When all of us are around 2 years old, we start to individualize, and how we do it is by saying no, 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 no. When you say no, you create boundaries. When you say no, you create some barriers. When you say no, you're refusing something from being in your space. And oftentimes we can't say yes until we've cleared some space. So we play with yes and no as two states to get the no state so that we can say no and send things away. So what thought, what belief, what unresourceful meaning do you need to refuse to have in your space? And to get ourselves to say no to that clears the space so then we can say yes to something and it'll come in and stay. This is why positive thinking oftentimes doesn't work. Because I say, yes, I can make $1 million. Yes, I can be spiritual. Yes, I can not worry about other people's opinions. And in the back of our mind going, yeah, you're just saying this. This is just BS. And that thought is going to dominate. So we need to get it out so that we can welcome something in. Other questions or comments about making meaning, setting frames, and unleashing your potentials. If you've seen the movie The Matrix, you know that Neo had to be coached in order to really become a master of the Matrix. And Morpheus was one of the coaches. Morpheus kept saying, free your mind. And when Neo had all the learning of Kung Fu and everything else, Morpheus says, show me what you can do. Let's see if it's in your body. So they got in the sparring room, they were fighting, and as Neo was really learning to distinguish things, at one point he was defeated, and Morpheus said, how did I defeat you? Do you think my muscles are stronger in this place? Do you think that's air you're breathing? Because in the world of the mind, it's all construct, and we invent it. And Neo says, I know what you're trying to do. And Morpheus says, I'm trying to free your mind. So they go to the jumping program, and if you've seen the movie and seen the jumping program, suddenly they're on top of skyscrapers. And Morpheus turns to Neo and he says, release all fear. and doubt and disbelief. And Morpheus runs, jumps from one skyscraper to the other one, and Neo goes, whoa, free my mind. And he tries it, but he falls. And the comment from the people watching was, everybody falls the first time. So as we learn to take control of our minds, what we represent, how we frame it, it's a learning itself about taking charge of that and freeing ourselves to the possibilities that you can run those movies and those frames, and you can set any frame that you want. We have to be careful about the frames we set, because whatever we set will become commands to our nervous system to actualize. So, comments, questions on some of this? We have some papers up here we're going to make available to you if you'd like to see them. One of the, and in the papers we have two patterns. One is intentionality, moving up to your highest intentions, so that you can move through the world intentional and not just reacting. The other one is what we call the phobia cure pattern, and it's a pattern that I think is really important because it helps us to neutralize negativity. Does anybody here, has anybody been through a negative experience and once wasn't enough? You keep playing that movie over and over and over again, and you can even feel bad, maybe even worse as you review it than when you had the experience. Does anybody have one? It was a B-rated movie the first time, but you're playing, you're going back and to the movie all over again and again. This pattern is how to take that movie arcade and just trash that old video so if you've had enough of it. And so the pattern is essentially the ability to step back and first of all notice yourself watching the movie. Because think about something that all you have to do is think about it, and it starts to push buttons. It gets you, it rattles you, it starts getting emotions going, and you wonder, where's this stuff coming from? Oh, it's that old movie. Because when you play the movie, you're inside the movie. So we'll step back, as if in a movie theater, to watch ourselves, to watch the movie, to see that old movie. When did that occur? What happened before it occurred? And how did it end? And what happened? And as we play it, we can step back and watch ourselves watching it. And then we can actually step back even another level to where we go to the control booth, where the movie is being played from. And from the control booth, notice that we're watching the movie, so 2 or 3 levels back, and now we can just fast forward it. And we can get to the end and go a little bit further to a scene of pleasure. A scene of pleasure, where you are enjoying yourself in some way, sometime, and then step into that pleasure, and while you're inside the pleasure, sending all the pleasure messages to your body, you can rewind the movie. Just in a second. Rewind it all the way back to the beginning, and just take that pleasure and what will happen is that it will neutralize the negativity, and if you do it often enough, you can create amnesia. I've done this with Vietnam vets, I've done this with people who've gone through rapes and robberies and all kinds of traumatic things, and then simple things like little phobias of snakes or frogs, or to take out the emotional charge so that they can just think about it, and if they don't need to think about it, they can dismiss it. And we call this the phobia cure. So we've got a pad, because it's a way of running your brain so that you run it instead of it running you. You could.
Is there anyone who'd like to experience that? Does anybody have a phobia? A phobia that they'd love to be able to get rid of? What's yours? Fear of flying? How long have you had that for? Okay.
What's the experience? What's the symptoms you get? How do you know you're experiencing fear of this? Can you experience that just by thinking about flying? Okay.
How much are you experiencing it right now, as you think?
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Well, just to hear a few others. Someone had a hand up over here. Is that? You'll have to talk up. We can't hear you.
I never used to, but I went off this rope swing and I fell probably like 30 feet right before a cliff, and I mean I bounced and I ended up being okay, just some scratches, but since then when I hike a lot and mountain climb, you know, and if I'm not roped in I'm just really scared, and if I don't know, you know, I just don't have that same balance as I did.
Okay. Can you feel that now as you think about it?
I can bring up that memory, absolutely, and bring it into the present moment. And even if it's just like 5 feet high, I look down and I know that even if I lose my balance, I can jump and be okay, but I still, yeah, I can pull it into the present moment.
Okay. Okay. Anyone else? Sorry? Okay. In what way? Emotional, sexual?
Probably all of the above, but just, I know I get panic attacks and start feeling like my chest gets really constricted, and I start just almost creating, like manifesting things to be able to push everything away.
How much are you experiencing that right now as you talk about it?
Every single ounce of me.
So you're going into state even now?
Yeah.
Okay. So this would be a good, if you're ready to get rid of that.
Oh, I'm ready to everything. Okay.
Okay. Would you like to come up and do that?
Sure.
All right. Good. Thank you.
I'm going to hand these out, pass these around. You guys can follow along.
So what I'd like you to do is to put a picture up on the screen of what you call intimacy. So has there ever been a time, has there ever been a traumatic experience with that?
Yes.
Okay. So, and when you think of that, are you going into state, or are you having some strong feelings even now? Okay. So I'd like you to sit down in the 10th row of the movie theater, and on the screen of your mind, see that younger you before it happened. So before it happened, or just before it happened, let's make a snapshot picture of it. Just a snapshot, black and white snapshot of you before you went into that situation that became traumatic, frightening. Okay. How old were you then?
I was
A baby. So do you have memory of it?
Of being a baby? No, I was just trying to visualize myself being a baby.
Okay. So.
Well, I'm just thinking about, there were numerous traumatic events.
Okay, let me encourage you to pick one that does create the feelings in you, but that you have memory of it, and that's something that's like a B-rated movie you can play.
Okay.
So as you put a snapshot of it up on the screen before it began, how old were you then?
18.
18. Okay. So as you step back and just sit here in the theater, let me invite you to step back. Imagine having popcorn or whatever your comfort food is as you watch it, because it was a terrible movie in the first place. Have you had enough of that movie? Okay. So before it happened, let's just make that a black and white snapshot. Where you're okay before it occurs. Now, I'm going to invite you to do something that's kind of strange. I want you to float out of your body and back to an imaginary projection booth, so that from that projection booth you can see the back of your head, your shoulders in the chair today, and that 18-year-old young woman on the screen. And from the projection booth, if at any time you feel like getting sucked back into the movie, you can put your hands on the plexiglass and know that I'm safe. I'm back here. I'm just watching myself watch that old movie. I'm not in it. I can stay out of it. I'm in the control booth. So in the control booth, you're seeing the back of your shoulders and your head in the chair, and you're seeing the snapshot at the beginning. From the control booth, I'd like you to turn the movie on and just let it play through, so that you're just observing behind the plexiglass and watch it until the end, when it's all over. You know what happened. You can move it on to the end. When you're at the end, move it a little bit further to where you come to a place of pleasure. Something that you were doing that was comforting yourself, delighting yourself. You were having some kind of pleasure. It might have been music, it might have been relaxing on a beach, it might have been something that gives you pleasure. At that scene of pleasure, let's stop it there. Freeze frame the pleasure scene. Now, in just a moment, I'm going to invite you to step into the pleasure scene. When you do, I want you to step in there and just be in that state of pleasure fully and completely. And then we're going to do something really weird. We're going to rewind this. Have you ever seen a movie rewind? Go backwards. What if you were inside of it? And that's the weirdness that's going to occur. We're going to do that really fast. So you ready? So step into the scene of pleasure. Just be there. Just let your whole body know that sense of pleasure, seeing what you saw, hearing what you heard, feeling the pleasure. Be there. Now let's rewind this. It's going to go this fast. So it's going to go zoom back to the very beginning. Clear the screen, and let's start in the scene of pleasure again. And let's rewind it again. It takes a little while for the brain to learn how to rewind. And it's going to go zoom. Back to the beginning. We'll open our eyes and just clear the screen. I want you to do that 5 times. Scene of pleasure, rewind, open eyes, clear screen, scene of pleasure. So we're just going to rewind it so that your mind can learn the skill of rewinding. So 5 times. When you get back to the very beginning, just open your eyes, clear the screen. After each time. Where it just takes this long. One more time.
It's like hair growth.
Okay, one more time. So let's put it to the test. If you've ever looked at a piece of literature and you looked at a sentence, something like, "Would you like to bring any other resource to this internal stance?" If I read this backwards, stance, internal, this, of, resource, other, and any bring to, like, you would, you just take all the meaning out of it. Like, what the hell does that mean? When we run something backwards, it takes the meaning out. And the meaning is what creates the emotion. So what I'd like you to do is to think about that scene again at 18 and see if you can feel as bad as you felt a moment ago. Try really, really hard to feel as bad as you can when you think about that. How bad do you feel now?
Not as bad.
Okay.
Not great, but.
Okay, so it's not a great.
But yeah, I don't. Yeah, I'm not
Has
feeling
it
quite
taken?
as anxious.
Has it taken the emotional charge out?
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay. So if you want to take it more out, what I would recommend is just rewind it 5 more times and test it 5 more times. Generally speaking, if you rewind it 20 times, you can create amnesia. Because the first thing that goes away is the emotional charge. And the next thing, it starts to get blurry, and then eventually it gets whited out. It's almost like a human eraser. So the design is to take out the emotional charge so that now you can think about it without going into state. So how's that? Well, give her a hand. Thank you.
So how do you feel now?
A little better. A lot more calm.
So what questions do you have about that process?
Is it smart? I mean, do you suggest taking it to the point of amnesia?
No.
Yeah, because I was going to say that would be forgetting the lessons that you might have learned.
Exactly.
People block out bad experiences in their life to have amnesia.
So the question is, would you recommend taking it to the point of amnesia? And definitely not, because you would forget the lessons that you've learned. There's been a few people that I've worked with who really went through some really traumatic, shitty experiences, and they just didn't need it, and they had made the lessons in other ways, and so they wanted that out of their heads. And so that's what this is about. We call it a phobia cure because it works really good on phobias and phobic. But any emotion that seems to push our buttons and gets us out of state.
One of the keys to doing this is identifying what the trigger is, what causes the person to go into that state. So if you're doing this you could do it on a phobia of mice, you could do it on a phobia of snakes, and you could do it on anything that's in the tangible sense as well. So the key is to identify what sets off the trigger. Is it seeing the mouse? Is it thinking of the mouse? And really identifying what sets it all off.
Other comments, questions on it? It's usually easier to have someone walk you through. So the way we wrote the pattern is with questions. So that if you lead someone through this process, then they can just experience it. If you try to do it to yourself, you'll be double tracking and it's difficult. But after you've run the pattern a dozen times or so, you'll kind of know it and you'll be able to do it with yourself. But at first, it's easier if you ask someone, just read these questions to me, and let them facilitate the process of that. What we're doing is running our own brain in the sense of, if here's a movie that gets triggered, and I keep stepping into it and being there again, and getting really unresourceful, this gives me the ability to step out, to observe it, to make some choices, to bring some resources to it, and then to choose the movies that play in the theater of my mind.
So if you're working with someone with a phobia type trauma, and it's like they don't remember why they have it, like they don't remember initial trauma, is it important to go back to initial trauma to release this, or?
We want to find what causes the trigger, and so we can find the most recent trigger of it.
So it doesn't matter, any experience that they've had will trigger it, and that'll take them back to the initial trauma, wherever it came from, whether it was past life, this life, whatever.
We just need to be able to find what they can remember as the first trigger.
Oh, okay, so do go back as far as you can.
This is the preferred way to go find a trigger. If a person just can't remember, then I like asking, if you could turn that into a movie, what would you be seeing? What would it be like? What would set it off? And as they map that, of course, as they're mapping, it's coming from their thinking, experiencing, and then I'll use that.
Because the key is to get the body associated. And as the body gets associated, but in the way that it gets associated, we're uncoding the memory. So we do have to activate the biology and the neurology to be involved in the process. So that's the key piece. Questions, other comments? Reflections?
Interesting how sometimes I'll feel embarrassed or have a movie that's back, from the day before that I'm playing, And I'll play it a few times and then you forget that you've played that movie, but you still have that feeling. And so you're in a whole different, you know, maybe you're having good, and then all of a sudden you'll remember that feeling, but you'll forget the movie. It's like you remember that there was that feeling there, and then that brings you back, right back into the movie usually.
So in neurosemantics, we talk about that as where all the content thought goes to is eventually into muscle memory or into emotion. And if I don't know where it came from, I can backtrack. What would I guess that it came from? And it doesn't, in one sense, it doesn't even make any difference what we come up with, as long as we have something that we can now work with and transform. But the end result is just the feeling, just that intuitive, reactive response that we're performing some meaning. And in terms of us as human beings, if a person is performing a lot of fear, apprehension, dread, I can guess that there's a fearful movie going on. If they're performing joy and playfulness and love and compassion, I can guess what movie is playing, consciously or unconsciously, because there's that correlation in the system. So to bring it back to the very beginning, we started asking what would be some of the greatest meanings, greatest movies that you could play that would make you, the best version of you, take your performances to peak levels that you haven't taken it to yet. What movie, what meaning, what belief, what decision would you like to get fully embodied? And what meanings have to be chunked away because they don't serve you well? And when you answer those two questions, then it's just a matter of how. And in neurosemantics and NLP, we have lots of patterns and processes for doing it. But the larger question is, what do you want to embody so that it fulfills your highest visions?
For those of you who are interested in the field of neurosemantics, it was first created in 1994 by Michael. Michael has many degrees, and the one that's really relevant to this work is he's got his doctorate in cognitive behavioural psychology. And out of the work that Michael did working in the field of neuro-linguistic programming, has everyone heard of NLP? Neuro-linguistic programming, and Michael began in that field a long time before that, and out of that came a whole new model that he birthed, which is called the meta-states model. And the meta-states model really was the beginning stages of a whole movement called Neuro-Semantics. And Neuro-Semantics is a movement, it's all in every country of the world now, and people are being trained at various different levels in that. You can be trained to be a practitioner, a master practitioner, or if you're wanting to go into the area of coaching, you can actually be trained and certified to become a professional coach. So that's a little bit of an idea of where to go if you want to learn more information. The website is neurosemantics.com, and it's an extensive website with so many free articles and copious amounts of information that you can download and actually start to use in your life day to day. If you're wanting to actually take a training, we happen to be doing some trainings next week, starting Tuesday. There's a 3-day introduction to NLP, and then there's a 3-day introduction to Neuro-Semantics. And then following on from that, we're doing our International Coach Certification training. So if you're wanting to be able to take what you've learned today and really have a much broader perspective of what NLP and neurosemantics is, a useful way to do that really is in a live workshop where you're really focusing on doing it.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, if anybody want these flyers, you can certainly.
Well, we want to thank Michael and Michelle so much for coming and being with us today. As you can see, they are the leaders in this field, and we're very fortunate to have them with us. So check out the materials and see if you would like to be taking one of the workshops. And we hope to see them again next year at Dreamtime.
Enjoy the rest of your Dreamtime. I hear last night was spectacular, huh? Yeah? It's a shame we missed it, huh?
Next year.
Next year. Well, enjoy, guys. Have fun. Celebrate.
Workshop this weekend. Is it like a